My teenage son started locking himself in the garage for hours every day, and I thought he was doing drugs until I broke the lock. Tyler started disappearing into the garage right after his 16th birthday. Every day after school he'd grab a Gatorade from the fridge and head straight out there for hours minimum, sometimes 6. At first I thought it was normal teenage stuff. Maybe he wanted space, privacy. He was growing up, but then I noticed he was losing weight. His eyes were always red and puffy when he came back inside. His hands had fresh cuts all over them, new ones every day. I asked his dad if he thought Tyler was using drugs in the garage. He laughed. Doing what? Huffing paint. But I couldn't shake it. Something was very wrong. The way he moved, the way he avoided looking at me. I started paying closer attention. Tyler would come home from school and barely say 2 words before disappearing. Some nights I'd hear him out there past midnight, power tools running, the smell of sawdust drifting through the vents. I'd press my ear to the door and hear him moving around, breathing hard like he was working on something physical. His grades were slipping. He quit basketball mid-season, stopped hanging out with friends completely. Just garage, garage, garage. When I asked what he was working on, he'd mumble, just a project, and walk away. His voice would crack like he was about to cry. I tried checking on him, but the door was locked. Always locked from the inside. Tyler, let me in. I'm Busse. Mom, what are you doing in there? Nothing. Please just leave me alone. My hands were shaking every time I stood outside that door. I convinced myself he was building bombs, making drugs, planning something terrible. His father thought I was overreacting. He's probably just building a workbench or something. Let the kid have his space. But the red eyes, the weight loss, the obsessive hours, the cuts. I couldn't sleep. I called his best friend's mom. Has Tyler said anything to you about what's going on? About what? I don't know. He's been acting so strange. She paused. Now that you mention it, Danny said Tyler's been really withdrawn lately. Won't talk to anyone. 3 months into this, I found blood on the garage door handle. Not a lot, just smears like he'd wiped his hand without noticing. Stomach dropped. I called his father at work, my voice shaking. Something's really wrong. I'm breaking the lock. Just wait until he gets home. We'll talk to him together. No, right now. I grabbed a hammer from the kitchen and smashed the padlock. It took 4 hits. My whole body was shaking. The metal finally gave way. I pushed the door open. The garage was full of wood everywhere. Cut pieces, sanded pieces, pieces with measurements written on them in pencil. In the center was a ramp, a wheelchair ramp, perfectly built, perfectly measured, not finished, but so close. Handrails already attached. I stood there staring at it. Why would Tyler build a wheelchair ramp? We didn't need one. Nobody we knew needed one. My throat was tight. Then I saw the papers on his workbench. Medical documents printed from the internet. I'd symptoms. I'd progression timeline. I'd life expectancy to 5 years. And underneath those, a crumpled piece of paper with my doctor's letterhead. The diagnosis I'd hidden in my bathroom drawer 3 months ago. My legs gave out. I sat down hard on the concrete floor. Tyler had found it. He'd known for 3 months. The same 3 months he'd been out here every single day building this for me. I heard the front door open. Tyler's voice calling out, "Mom, you home?" His footsteps coming closer. He appeared in the doorway and froze. His eyes went to the broken lock, then to me sitting on the floor surrounded by sawdust, then to the ramp behind me. Tyler. My voice broke completely. His face just crumpled. This 16-year-old kid who thought he could build a ramp before his mom needed it, before she'd have to tell him she was dying. I thought if I finished it first, he couldn't get the words out. Just stood there with tears running down his face. I wanted you to have it ready so you wouldn't have to ask anyone. I didn't get up. I couldn't. The concrete was cold against my legs, but the chill was nothing compared to the freezing absolute zero spreading through my chest. Tyler didn't move either. He stood in the doorway, his silhouette framed by the late afternoon sun that was trying to force its way into our dusty, dim reality. The sawdust danced in the light beams between us, millions of tiny particles of pine and oak, the physical evidence of his silence. You knew, I whispered. It wasn't a question. Tyler dropped his backpack. It hit the floor with a heavy thud that made us both flinch. He walked over, not to me, but to the workbench. He picked up the crumpled paper with the diagnosis, amyotrophic lateral sclerosis, and smoothed it out with his thumb, his hands rough, calloused, and covered in tiny healing nicks. I found it looking for a stapler, he said, his voice sounding older than 16. Deep, hollow, devoid of the cracking whine of puberty I was used to. 3 months ago. You hid it under the towels. Mom, why did you hide it? Because I'm your mother. I choked out, finally pushing myself up. My left hand trembled, a symptom I had blamed on caffeine, now exposed for what it was. I'm supposed to protect you. You aren't supposed to be building this. I gestured to the ramp. It was magnificent. It wasn't just functional, it was crafted. The edges were routed smooth, the joinery was precise. He hadn't just nailed boards together. He had built a piece of furniture meant to carry the person he loved most. I looked up the timeline, Tyler said, turning to face me. His eyes were red again, but not from sawdust this time. They said eventually walking gets hard, then impossible. I didn't want you to be stuck inside. I wanted you to be able to go to the garden, to feel the sun. Tyler. I didn't want to talk about it. He shouted suddenly, the anger cracking through his calm facade. If I talked about it, it would be real. If I just built the ramp, it was just a project. It was just wood and screws. But if I told Dad or asked you? He slammed his hand against the railing he had sanded so perfectly. Then you're actually dying. The word hung there. Dying. The front door of the house slammed shut. Hello. It was Mark. My husband. The man who thought our son was huffing paint. Garage. I called out, wiping my face frantically. When Mark walked in, the smile died on his face instantly. He saw the broken lock on the floor. He saw me on the ground. He saw Tyler shivering with rage and grief. And then he saw the ramp. What's going on? Mark asked, stepping over a pile of 2x4 offcuts. Tyler, did you build this? Why? Tyler looked at me. He wouldn't say it. He couldn't do it to his father. I took a breath. It was the hardest breath of my life. Mark, sit down. Why? I don't want to sit down. Why is there a wheelchair ramp in our garage? Because, I said, reaching for the medical papers Tyler had left on the bench. I held them out to my husband. Because Tyler knew before you did. And he's been preparing us for the end of the world. The weeks following the revelation were a blur of oscillation between suffocating grief and aggressive normalcy. Mark didn't take it like Tyler. Tyler was a builder. He processed through action. Mark was a fixer, a negotiator. He spent hours on the phone with specialists in Boston, at the Mayo Clinic in Europe. He argued with insurance companies. He became obsessed with antioxidants, experimental trials, and second opinions. He refused to look at the ramp. To Mark, the ramp was a tombstone. Tyler, conversely, doubled down. Once the secret was out, the garage door stayed open. The sound of the saw became the soundtrack of our evenings. But now the projects migrated inside. I came home from a neurologist appointment one Tuesday to find Tyler in the bathroom. He had removed the vanity door. What are you doing? I asked, leaning against the frame. My balance was getting worse. I dragged my left foot slightly now. Widening the clearance, he muttered, applying sealant to a pipe. And I mounted the toilet paper holder. It's higher now. Easier to reach without twisting. Ty, honey, I can reach it fine. For now, he said. He didn't look up. It's easier to do it now than when we're in a panic later. He was robbing me of my hope, I thought bitterly. But he was also saving me from my future humiliation. The dynamic in the house shifted. Mark was the general, commanding armies of doctors. Tyler was the engineer, fortifying the castle. And I was the crumbling statue in the center of the courtyard. The tension exploded in late November. Thanksgiving was approaching. Mark wanted to host. He wanted to pretend everything was normal. She can't cook a turkey, Mark. Tyler yelled. They were in the kitchen. I was in the living room, pretending to read. My hands shaking too much to turn the page. She isn't an invalid, Tyler. She has some weakness in her hand, that's it. Stop treating her like she's already gone. Mark shouted back. Have you watched her eat? Tyler challenged. She can't hold the fork steady. If she drops the turkey, she burns herself. I'm just saying we order food. I am not ordering takeout for Thanksgiving. We are a family, and we are going to have a normal holiday. There is nothing normal about this. I heard the crash of a plate. I struggled up from the chair and shuffled into the kitchen. Tyler was breathing hard, standing over shattered ceramic. Mark looked defeated, leaning against the counter, his face buried in his hands. I'll cook, I said softly. They both looked at me. But Tyler is going to be my sous chef, I added. And Mark, you're going to do the cleanup. No arguing. That Thanksgiving, I dropped the gravy boat. It shattered. Hot brown liquid splattered everywhere. Mark froze. He looked terrified, waiting for me to break down. Tyler didn't blink. He grabbed a roll of paper towels. It's just gravy, he said flatly. Dad, grab the mop. Mom, seat. I'll plate the rest. He moved around the kitchen with an efficiency that broke my heart. He knew where everything was. He anticipated my needs before I voiced them. He cut my turkey into small, bite-sized pieces before bringing the plate to the table, disguising it so it didn't look like a child's meal. He was 16 going on 40. By February, I couldn't do the stairs. The master bedroom was on the second floor. For weeks, I had been scooting up on my backside, making a joke of it, refusing to let Mark carry me. But one night, my legs simply refused the signal. Mark suggested a stair lift. He had the brochure ready. No, Tyler said. He was doing homework at the kitchen table. They're slow, they break, and they cost $5,000. I'm moving the bedroom. To where? Mark asked, exhausted. The circles under his eyes were dark purple. The dining room. We never use it. It has the double doors. I can frame a wall to separate it from the living room for privacy, but keep it wide enough for later. We are not sleeping in the dining room, Mark snapped. Mom is, Tyler said. You can sleep upstairs if you want. 2 days later, my bed was in the dining room. Tyler had hung heavy velvet curtains rather than building a wall, realizing I might want to hear the TV or see them in the kitchen. But the real test came in March. The wheelchair arrived. It was a sleek, black specialized chair. My chariot, Mark called it with forced cheerfulness. I sat in it. It felt comfortable. It also felt like a prison cell. Let's go for a walk, Mark said. It's a beautiful day. He pushed me to the front door. There was a 6-inch drop to the porch, and then 3 steps down to the walkway. Mark tilted the chair back to navigate the threshold. It was clumsy. I felt unsafe. Wait, Tyler said. He appeared from the hallway. Not the front door. Why? Use the garage. Mark sighed. Tyler, we're not going out through the garage like. Just use the garage, Dad. Mark wheeled me into the kitchen, through the laundry room, and to the door connecting to the garage. He opened it. The ramp was finished. But he had changed it. It wasn't just plywood anymore. He had stained it a rich, warm mahogany. He had installed low-voltage LED strip lighting under the handrails, so the path was illuminated with a soft, amber glow. The transition from the house floor to the ramp was seamless, flush, not even a bump. Mark paused. He looked at the craftsmanship. The way the corners were mitered. The sturdiness of the posts. He pushed me out onto it. The wheels glided silently. The slope was gentle, perfectly calculated so that I didn't feel like I was tipping forward. As we descended, I looked at the walls of the garage. Tyler had cleaned it. The tools were organized. And on the walls at my seated eye level, he had hung photos. Framed pictures of us. The trip to the Grand Canyon. Tyler's 10th birthday. Mark and I at our wedding. It wasn't a garage. It was a gallery. I didn't want you staring at oil stains, Tyler said quietly from the doorway behind us. Mark stopped the chair at the bottom of the ramp. He put the brake on. He walked over to the workbench, turned his back to us, and his shoulders began to shake. I watched my husband weep for the first time in 20 years. Tyler walked down the ramp, past me, and stood next to his father. He didn't hug him. He just stood shoulder to shoulder, letting him know he wasn't carrying the load alone. Year 2. The voice went. That was the hardest part for me. I could deal with the immobility. I could deal with the feeding tube. But not being able to tell them I loved them? That was hell. We used a text-to-speech program on an iPad. I would type with my eyes, an eye-tracking technology that Mark had fought the insurance company for 6 months to get. Tyler had graduated high school. He didn't go to the state university he had been accepted to. He enrolled in the local community college, taking engineering courses at night. I need to be here, he told me when I typed out go. I can study here. Dad needs help lifting you. And he was right. Mark was aging rapidly. His back was bad. Tyler was young and strong. He had developed a rhythm for transferring me from the bed to the chair, a dance of leverage and gentleness. But the house was changing again. Tyler began to modify the world to fit me. He built a custom stand for the iPad that could articulate to any angle, so I could see it whether I was in bed or the chair. He rewired the living room so that I could control the lights, the television, and the thermostat with the eye tracker. One evening, a storm knocked the power out. The ventilator, the machine that helped me breathe at night, beeped an alarm. Battery backup engaged. Mark panicked. How long does the battery last? 4 hours, Tyler said. He was already moving. He ran to the garage. I heard the roar of an engine. He had bought a generator. He hadn't told us. He ran an extension cord through a hole he'd drilled in the floor weeks ago, just in case. Within 3 minutes, my machine was humming on AC power. Tyler came in wet from the rain, smelling of gasoline. He sat by my bed. Thank you, the iPad voice said, robotic and cold. Tyler took my hand. His hand was larger now, rougher. I'm not letting the lights go out on you, Mom. Not yet. The 3rd year brought the end closer. I was tired. My body was a heavy, useless vessel. I spent most of my time sleeping. Mark had softened. He had stopped fighting the reality and started cherishing the moments. He would read to me for hours. But Tyler was distant. He was spending time in the garage again. He's building something else, Mark told me one night. I hear the sander. He's out there until 3 a.m. Ask him, I typed. I did. He gave me the old answer. Just a project. I worried. Was he building a coffin? The thought chilled me. He was pragmatic enough to do it. A week later, Tyler came in. He looked exhausted, sawdust in his hair, eyes puffy. Mom, he said. Dad, I need you to come to the garage. She can't, Ty. It's too cold, Mark said. I put in a heater. Please. It took 20 minutes to get me into the chair and bundled up. Mark wheeled me down the mahogany ramp, the LEDs lighting the way like a runway. The garage was cleared out. In the center, covered by a tarp, was something large. I know you miss the outside, Tyler said. I know you hate that you can't go to the beach anymore. The sand gets in the wheels. The terrain is too rough. He pulled the tarp. It wasn't a coffin. It was a vehicle. It looked like a cross between a golf cart and a Mars rover. It had 6 thick, knobby tires, a roll cage, a racing seat with a 5-point harness that looked incredibly secure. And in the center, A docking station that locked my ventilator and batteries into place. I used an old ATV engine, Tyler explained, his voice rushing now excited. I welded the frame myself. The suspension is independent on all 6 wheels. It's fluid-based, so it won't jar you. It's smooth as glass. I tested it with a crate of eggs. Not one broke. Mark walked around it, stunned. Tyler, this is... It has a mounting bracket for the eye tracker, Tyler pointed out. And a windshield to block the wind so your eyes don't dry out. He looked at me. I want to take you to the lake, Mom. To the top of the ridge. To watch the sunset. When? I typed. Right now. It took an hour to get me strapped in. Mark was nervous, checking every bolt. Tyler was confident. He sat in the driver's seat, which was positioned slightly behind and to the left of mine, so I had the unobstructed view. The engine purred. He had installed a custom muffler to make it whisper quiet. We rolled out of the garage. The suspension was miraculous. I felt the movement, the sway, but no impact. No pain. We didn't go on the road. We went into the woods behind our house. Tyler navigated the trail slowly. Branches reached out, but the roll cage pushed them aside. We climbed. The engine torqued up, pushing us up the incline of careful dirt paths Tyler must have spent weeks clearing. We reached the ridge overlooking the reservoir just as the sun began to dip below the horizon. The sky was a bruised purple and burning orange. The water below reflected it all like a perfect mirror. Tyler killed the engine. Silence. Just the wind in the trees and the rhythmic whoosh of my ventilator. Mark had walked up behind us. He couldn't fit in the Rover. He stood beside me, holding my hand. Tyler sat next to me. I looked at the view. I hadn't seen the world from this height in 3 years. I had seen ceilings. I had seen walls. I had seen screens. But here was the horizon. Infinite. Unending. I looked at the screen. I calibrated my eyes. Beautiful, the machine said. Then I looked at Tyler. He wasn't looking at the sunset. He was looking at me, watching my face, checking my oxygen stats on a monitor he had dashboard mounted. He wasn't a drug addict. He wasn't a troubled teen. He was a guardian. He was a man who had taken the worst thing in the world, his mother's decay, and built a fortress around it. Tyler, I typed. He looked at the screen. You built me wings. He smiled then. A real smile. The first one I'd seen since he was 15. Tears ran down his face, cutting tracks through the dust on his cheeks. I love you, Mom, he whispered. I held on for 4 more months. I like to think I stayed for them. When I finally let go, it was peaceful. I was in the dining room. The velvet curtains were open. The sun was shining on the hardwood floor. Mark was holding my right hand. Tyler was holding my left. I wasn't afraid. How could I be? I had seen the lengths my family would go to carry me. I knew they would be okay. Mark had learned to be tender. Tyler had learned to be strong. The funeral was large. People came from everywhere. They talked about my kindness, my cookies, my work at the library. But after the service, the house was quiet. Mark and Tyler sat on the back porch. The Rover sat in the garage silent. The ramp was empty. What do we do now? Mark asked, staring into his coffee. The house felt massive, cavernous without the medical equipment, without the nurses. Tyler looked at his hands. I got a letter today. Yeah. MIT. I applied a few months ago. Essay was about adaptive engineering for palliative care. Mark looked up. And I got in. Full ride. Mark set his coffee down. He looked at the garage. He looked at the wheelchair ramp that wound its way down to the driveway. A structure that was built better than the house itself. She would be so proud, Mark said, his voice thick. I'm not going to tear it down, Tyler said suddenly. The ramp. No. I think we should donate it. Or the design. There are other people, Dad. Other kids who need to get their moms outside. Epilogue. 10 years later. The workshop is sleek, modern, smelling of ozone and fresh-cut aluminum rather than sawdust. Tyler walks through the floor of Helix Mobility. He's 36 now. He wears a suit, but his hands are still rough. He stops at a workstation where a young intern is struggling with a schematic for a pediatric exoskeleton. The joint is too stiff, Tyler says, pointing. If the kid wants to run, you need more flex here. It has to feel like play, not therapy. Yes, sir, the intern says. Mr. Vance? Can I ask you something? Sure. Why are all our models named after wood? Oak, cedar, mahogany. Tyler smiles. He touches the smooth metal of the prototype. Because, he says, his mind flashing back to a garage, to the smell of sawdust, to a wheelchair ramp glowing with amber light, and a Rover on a ridge at sunset. Because everything I know about saving people, I learned with a hammer and a saw. He walks back to his office. On his desk, there is no computer, just a framed photo. A woman in a rugged, 6-wheeled vehicle, silhouetted against a setting sun. She looks frail, wires connecting her to machines. But her head is high. She is looking at the horizon. And underneath, engraved in the silver frame, build them wings.